Principles Show daily podcast by and for you.
All right, ready for this? Today, we're diving deep into, well, Egypt. But hold on, not the pyramids and all that. We're talking modern-day Egypt.
Right. Got to keep up with the times.
Exactly. And we're looking at this report. It's about private sector development in Egypt, straight from a BRICS website. It's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, these BRICS reports, always some interesting stuff in there.
For instance, get this. Since 2020, they've pumped a crazy 57% of what they call concessional financing into the private sector.
57%.
Yep, 57%.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what they're up to, right?
Big commitment, that's for sure. And for anyone scratching their heads about concessional financing.
Oh, yeah. Explain it like we're five.
Basically, it's like loans and grants, but super good terms. Think lower interest, longer to pay back. So when a country like Egypt puts over half of that kind of cash into private businesses...
I mean business.
Exactly. It's a statement.
And it's not just any private sector. They're pushing for this green economy thing, want to be a startup hub for the whole region.
Ambitious.
Oh, absolutely. Their Minister of Planning, they had this whole economic conference, laid out their vision. What's your take on this green economy thing, especially with, emerging economies and all that?
Well, you got to consider emerging economies, they have a tough time getting funding, right?
Yeah, it's a struggle.
We're talking a global financing gap, something like $2.5 to $4 trillion every single year. That's a massive roadblock.
So by going green, they're trying to, attract a certain kind of investor.
Exactly. The kind who's into sustainability. It's strategic.
So not just catching up, but kind of leapfrogging ahead.
You got it.
Speaking of which, this report mentions a project. They teamed up with the European Investment Bank, something like 271 million euros.
Money.
All for sustainable industrial projects like renewable energy, carbon reduction, that stuff. Good for the planet. Maybe good for their economy, too.
Yeah, that's them putting their money where their mouth is, for sure. It's all part of their big plan, the framework for sustainability and development finance. Basically, their roadmap, 3 main things they're after. Making their economy more competitive, that green transition we've been talking about, and making sure the whole system stays stable.
Sounds good on paper, but how's the green transition actually happening? They mentioned a voluntary carbon market and green bonds, first ones back in 2021. To be honest, kind of lost me there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's break it down. Voluntary carbon market. Think about businesses balancing their carbon footprint.
Offsetting, right.
Right. They invest in projects that cut emissions, maybe reforestation, renewable energy, stuff like that, get credit for helping out, even if their own business isn't perfect.
So balancing out the bad with some good elsewhere.
Exactly. Now, green bonds are different. They're like financial tools, but specifically for eco-friendly projects. When Egypt issues them, they're raising money that has to go towards green stuff.
So it's like they're telling investors, this is where our priorities are, not just talk.
Yep, they're putting their money where their mouth is. And this all ties into attracting that international investment, becoming a leader in the green scene. They've even got this deal, 70 million euro risk guarantee with the EBRD, that's the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development.
Hold on. Risk guarantee, what's that do?
It's a big deal for smaller companies. They often struggle to get loans or investments seen as risky. But with this guarantee from the EBRD...
Easier to get funding.
You got it. Helps them grow, contribute to the economy.
So they're not just focused on the big players, they're thinking about the little guys, too.
Exactly. And speaking of helping out, there's this thing they launched, the Hafiz platform. Pretty cool. Ever heard of it?
Can't say I have. Fill me in.
It's like a one-stop shop for businesses, anything to do with sustainable development. Connects them with financial help, technical advice, all that. Makes going green less of a headache.
Wow, so they're not just talking about it, they're building the whole system to support it.
Right. Recognizing that attracting investment is one thing, but you got to make sure businesses can actually thrive in this new green world. And remember that working group we mentioned, the one for building up a startup scene in Egypt.
So they're not just helping existing businesses go green, they're trying to make a whole new generation of sustainable startups.
That's the idea. It's ambitious.
Big time. I mean, could this be a model for other countries, in the region, trying to boost innovation and, their economies?
It's an interesting question. Especially with all those global financing challenges we talked about, it could be a game changer.
It's wild, right? Egypt's not just reacting to what everyone else is doing. They're shaping their own future.
It's like they're saying, hey, world, we're not just ancient history anymore. We've got a plan.
And that plan. becoming the leader in sustainable development. Green businesses, innovative startups, the whole shebang.
And they're not just talking about it. That 57% investment, that's a serious move, not just a number on a page. It's a whole different way of thinking about their economy. Yeah, they're realizing that the old ways, depending on aid and those old industries, that's not going to cut it anymore. Not in this century.
Especially with everything coming at us, right?
Right.
Climate change, resources getting scarce, the global economy going crazy.
Exactly. And Egypt seems to get it. They know that to solve these problems, you got to be innovative. You got to get the public and private sectors working together.
So they're setting up this whole system to help businesses that are doing the cutting edge stuff, the sustainable solution.
And it's not just about throwing money at the problem. They're building the infrastructure, putting in the regulations, all the stuff to make this transition actually happen.
Like that Hafiz platform we talked about earlier,
Great.
making it easier for businesses to get green financing, get the expertise they need.
And don't forget about that working group, the one for startups. They're really trying to build a space where new ideas can take off.
Like planting the seeds for a future where Egypt is the place to be for innovation, for tech breakthroughs.
Exactly. They understand that entrepreneurship is a huge driver of economic growth. They're setting the stage for a new generation of entrepreneurs.
But let's be real for a second. Any big plan like this, there's got to be some risks, right? Some things that could go wrong.
That's a good point. It's important to remember this shift, it's not going to be easy. There will be bumps in the road.
For example, what if focusing so much on the private sector makes inequality worse?
That's a real concern. If everyone doesn't benefit from this growth, if the gap between rich and poor gets wider, that's trouble.
So Egypt has to make sure everyone has a chance. Inclusive growth, right? That's got to be a priority.
Absolutely. They need policies that help people move up, that prevent all the wealth from ending up in the hands of just a few.
Another thing, what if the government just can't handle this whole thing? It's huge, right?
It's a massive undertaking. And yeah, there's always a risk of things getting bogged down, inefficiency, corruption, policies that miss the mark.
So transparency, accountability, good governance, those are key.
Couldn't agree more. Clear rules, regulations, oversight, all that is crucial to make sure things are done right, that the money is used responsibly.
But even with those risks, the potential upside is huge, right? If Egypt pulls this off, they could be a model for other countries trying to do the same thing.
Imagine that. Countries competing to be the most sustainable, the most innovative. That would change everything.
And it's not just about the money. It's about a fairer future, a better environment for everyone.
That's the ultimate goal. Economic growth that goes hand in hand with social progress and a healthy planet.
So, yeah, there are definitely risks. But what Egypt is doing, it's a glimpse into a future where sustainability and prosperity go together.
It's a fascinating case study. We need to keep our eyes on this one.
Okay, so we've got the big picture. Now let's zoom in a bit. What are some specific things they're doing?
Let's get into the details. How are they turning these ideas into action?
We touched on renewable energy. But what exactly are they doing there? What kind of projects?
Well, they're putting a lot into solar and wind power. They want to diversify where their energy comes from, get away from fossil fuels.
And that carbon market, the voluntary one. Remind me, what's that all about? How's that helping them be more sustainable?
Right. So that's where businesses can offset their emissions, can't get rid of them entirely, invest in a project that reduces emissions somewhere else.
Like a company can't go totally green on its own, so it helps plant trees somewhere else or supports a clean energy project.
Yep, that's the idea. It's a way for businesses to take responsibility for their impact, even if they're not perfect.
And this is becoming a thing all over the world, right, as companies feel the pressure to clean up their act.
Definitely. It's a big part of sustainability strategies now, and Egypt's getting ahead of the curve.
Okay, now those green bonds again. How do they work? What kind of impact are they having?
So green bonds, they're like regular bonds, but the money raised can only be used for environmental projects. So when Egypt issues them, they're telling investors, this money is going towards clean energy, green transportation, sustainable water management, that kind of thing.
So it's a way to attract investment specifically for things that match their sustainability goals.
You got it. It sends a signal that they're serious about this.
Yeah.
And it channels money into projects that are good for the environment.
And then there's the Hafiz platform, which we talked about before. But it's worth mentioning again because it's just so unique and innovative.
Totally. It's a fantastic example of how Egypt is using technology to make green financing easier, to get more businesses involved.
It's like they're taking all the hassle out of it, providing all the information, the resources, the technical help, all in one place.
Exactly. And they're not just focused on the big corporations. They're making sure that small and medium businesses have what they need to make this transition too.
So they're really coming at this from all angles. Policy changes, financial tools, technology, the whole package.
It's a really impressive integrated approach.
That's what makes it so interesting. It's not just random actions, it's strategic, well thought out.
They're not just reacting, they're shaping their future.
But at the end of the day, it's not just about fancy policies. It's about real people.
That's the most important thing. What does this mean for ordinary Egyptians? What are the good and bad things that could happen?
That's the key question, right? What are the potential benefits, but also are there any downsides for the average person?
Well, one good thing is it could create more jobs, more opportunities for people to make a living.
Especially in the green economy, right? That's where a lot of the growth is expected to be.
Exactly. And these are often better jobs, higher paying, more skills involved. That could mean a better life for a lot of Egyptians.
So it's not just any job, it's a better job. More security, better pay, a chance to move up.
Exactly. And beyond jobs, this could mean better access to things like clean energy, clean water, things that are getting harder to come by in many parts of the world.
And with climate change, making sure those resources are available is really important.
Right. By investing in sustainable infrastructure and resource management, Egypt is making itself more resilient, more prepared for the future.
So this is not just about the economy. It's about making life better for everyone in Egypt.
A more sustainable, fairer, more prosperous society.
But we can't ignore the potential problems.
Yeah.
Like we said before, what about inequality? Could this actually make things worse?
That's a valid point. If the benefits of this growth aren't shared, if it just makes the rich richer, that's a recipe for trouble.
So it's crucial that everyone benefits, that no one gets left behind.
Absolutely. They need policies that promote social mobility, that provide a safety net for those who might struggle, that give everyone a fair chance to be part of this new economy.
And what about the government's ability to actually pull this off? It's a huge undertaking. Are they up to the task?
It's a big challenge, no doubt. There's always a risk of inefficiency, corruption, mistakes along the way.
So transparency, accountability, good governance, those are key.
Absolutely essential. The process has to be open and transparent. Public funds need to be used responsibly, and there need to be ways to address any problems that come up.
So while the potential benefits are great, there are also challenges to be aware of.
It's a balancing act, requiring careful planning, thoughtful execution, and a commitment to inclusivity and sustainability.
But overall, it's an exciting time for Egypt. They're at the forefront of this global movement towards a greener future.
And they're proving that you can have economic growth and environmental protection at the same time.
They're showing the world that sustainability isn't just the right thing to do, it's also good for business.
And that's a message that goes way beyond Egypt. It has implications for everyone.
It could inspire other countries to follow their lead, to work towards a more sustainable future for all of us.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, though. We've covered a lot looking at all the different sides of this economic transformation in Egypt.
We've talked about why they're doing this, the specific things they're doing, the good and bad that could come from it, and what it all means for the region and the world.
But before we finish up this deep dive, I want to go back to something we mentioned earlier, the idea that Egypt is writing its own story.
I love that way of putting it. They're not just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. They're taking control.
They're stepping back onto the world stage, not as an ancient civilization, but as a modern country with a vision for the future.
They're doing it in a way that puts sustainability, fairness, and innovation front and center.
It's inspiring, and we'll definitely be watching to see how it all unfolds.
All right, so for the last part of our deep dive, let's turn things over to you, the listener.
What does all this mean for you? What can you take away from what Egypt is doing?
What lessons can we learn from their successes and their challenges? And how can we apply those lessons to our own lives, our own communities?
Those are the questions we'll be exploring in our final segment, so stick around.
So we've spent all this time looking at what Egypt's doing, all the changes they're making, and it's a lot to take in. But before we go, I want to talk about, what does it all mean for the people listening?
Yeah, it's great to analyze all this stuff, but the real question is, how does it connect to your life, to the world you live in?
Exactly. We see Egypt going all in on private companies, especially green ones, attracting investors, big projects, building a whole system for sustainable businesses. But what can we learn from that?
I think one big thing is sustainability. It's not just some trendy word anymore. It's a real chance for countries to grow their economies. Egypt's showing that investing in green tech, that's good for the planet, and it can create jobs, make money.
And it's not just the government doing it all, right? They're getting businesses involved,
Yeah.
encouraging them to go green, helping startups and smaller companies.
No, that teamwork, it's super important. We need everyone on board to really tackle climate change, make a sustainable future. It's not a one-person job.
Another thing, Egypt's showing that you can do big things, even when it seems impossible. Remember that financing gap we talked about?
Okay.
Emerging economies have a tough time getting the money they need. But Egypt, they're showing that if you plan smart, if you focus on innovation, you can overcome those challenges.
And what's cool is they're not just copying someone else. They're doing it their way, defining their own path to sustainability, to success.
Yeah, they're shaking things up, showing that developing countries, they can be the leaders in this whole green transition.
No, we got to be real. It's not all perfect in Egypt. We talked about the risks, things like inequality getting worse, corruption, the government messing things up. Those are real concerns.
Definitely things to keep an eye on.
But even if they hit some bumps, the fact that they're trying new things, taking risks, that's valuable in itself.
It shows us that we don't have all the answers yet, right? We're going to keep learning, adapting, trying new things.
Exactly.
So think about it. As you go about your day, what can you do in your own life, in your community, to contribute to a more sustainable future?
It can be anything, right? Supporting businesses that care about the environment, speaking up for policies that make a difference, just making better choices in your daily life. Every little bit helps.
Because at the end of the day, it's not just about big speeches or government plans. It's about what we do, each and every one of us.
If a country like Egypt can make such a big shift, it gives us hope, right? Hope that a better future, a greener future, it's possible. It's within reach.
And that's our deep dive into Egypt's journey to a green economy. Thanks for joining us, and we hope this gets you thinking, even after the episode is over.